Hi, everyone, and welcome to another TrialSiteNews interview. I'm your host, Brandon. And today we'll be talking again to Dr. David Wiseman and Daniel O'Connor. Dr. Wiseman is a PhD bioscientist with a background in pharmacy, pharmacology, immunology, and experimental pathology. Since 1996, he has run his own medical product R&D consulting business, and since 2020, he has focused on COVID-19. He has made numerous submissions on COVID-19 vaccines to government bodies, including the FDA, CDC, and NIH. And he's a contributor to TrialSiteNews. You can find Dr. Weissman on X at adhesions.org, and we will link that in our video. Daniel O'Connor is the founder of TrialSiteNews, and you can read his opinion pieces at trialsitenews.com. Today's discussion will focus on the April 15 and 16 meeting of the CDC's Meeting of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, also known as ACIP. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, good evening, good morning.
Dr. Weissman, do you want to start by giving us a summary on the CDC meetings and what you observed?
Sure. I'm going to just put up the agenda, give you the screen, and we should be good to go. Here it is. Okay, so the CDC convened their ACIP committee. This was one of the scheduled, I think, 3 meetings a year meeting. So it was not a specially convened meeting. And it was a 2-day meeting to discuss a number of issues with a number of different vaccine issues. I'm going to be focusing, this is just the agenda. You can get this from the ACIP website. I'm going to be focusing on the discussion which took place on the Tuesday on the COVID vaccines. And you can see here highlighted the 1, 2, 3, 4 discussions, one on the Moderna 1283, the new generation Moderna product, as well as presentations from CDC on the epidemiology of COVID, vaccine effectiveness, and what they should be recommending for the next iteration of the COVID vaccines when and if they come out. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to focus on the Moderna product for a moment. Do you want to ask me any questions at this point, or should I just jump into Moderna? I'll just jump into Moderna. Okay.
Yes,
So,
sir.
okay. So, what was interesting was this presentation from Moderna, and I thought it was a little odd that it was actually being presented. And the idea is that Moderna was introducing with their Dr. Rizkallah their new generation, next generation COVID vaccine, which is called mRNA 1283, not to be confused with the original version, the Spikevax version, which is 1273. And they've been talking about this in their scientific presentations to their investors for the last couple of years. So it's not completely new information, but it is new information to the members of the ACIP and the wider community outside of the Moderna investors. And the idea is that in this next generation vaccine, what they're doing is they're injecting or delivering the mRNA, presumably contained in the same lipid nanoparticles that we've seen before. And rather than that mRNA inducing the production of the complete full-length spike protein, those little spikes that stick up on the outside of the coronavirus, they are only causing the top end, called the receptor binding domain, and the tail end, as it were, called the N-terminal domain. They're only expressing those regions, and those regions are linked through a small protein chain. Don't know how long it is, but fairly small, I would imagine. And so it's as if you've only got the head and the tail, but not the middle of the spike protein. And they surmise that this is going to give them all sorts of advantages, because this same technology where you can link basically 2 molecules together gives them the opportunity down the line to introduce multi-purpose vaccines, let's say, where one end of the protein that is being induced by the vaccine is, let's say, to COVID coronavirus, and the other end, let's say, might be against influenza, for example. So you could actually sort of have a 2-for-1 in the same vaccine without having to double up all the amounts of injections, et cetera, et cetera. So there could be some potential advantages. And I suppose you could even branch this out as well. So you could maybe have a three-way protein perhaps as well. But that was their general presentation. But the main points about this are as follows. Firstly, they're saying that the dose that they're using is lower, 5 times lower than the conventional dose that they're using for Spikevax, the original product, meaning the Spikevax has a dose of 50 micrograms, and in this new generation product, it's 10 micrograms. Okay, well, that's potentially very good. Still not brilliant, but better than it was, because presumably that means we lower the amount of lipid nanoparticles that have various toxicities associated with them. We presumably lower the amount of residual DNA, okay, which is an advantage, but still, if there's residual DNA, that's a problem. We presumably lower the amount of what are called lipid adducts, which are molecules that are formed when the RNA combines with the lipids, the fatty molecules that are part of these little blobs, these bubbles that this RNA is delivered in. So overall, they're reducing the dose of all of those things, which is a potential advantage. Again, we still have a long way to go, but at least that's a move in the right direction. And they showed data from several clinical trials that they had been performing over the last several years, and this is data from one of the trials. But this trial involved 5,000 patients roughly in each group. In the this was a Spikevax versus the new generation product, was not placebo controlled, but they had 5,000 patients in each group, and they showed data from the BA.4/5 Omicron period. So these are actually bivalent vaccines, which was the prevailing versions that were being used, say, 3 years ago. And that was their main data set. They had a smaller data set using the XBB version, which was the next variant that we had like 2 versions ago, or 1 version ago. Okay, so this is old data. And so I have a number of questions as to what's going on here. If this product is superior, let's say, in terms of the antigenicity, it's at least as good. What they're saying is it needs a lower dose to produce a similar or better antibody response and probably a T cell response. Okay, but if this product is better and it has a lower dose and it may have a better safety profile, why weren't they introducing this, say, 2-3 years ago, when they could have easily done so under the EUA regulations? The data that they're presenting certainly met the EUA criteria that the FDA were using and relying on to produce new variant vaccines, etc. They actually didn't need clinical trial data, as a matter of fact. Why didn't they introduce it then? That seems rather puzzling.
Dr. Wiseman, can I add something?
Yes.
Yeah, we at TrialSite, we tracked this kind of mysterious product. It was sort of mysterious. They never made a lot of noise about it. It was always buried in financial reports and once in a while a press release. But it would seem that it was on a different track for some reason. Okay?
Yeah.
We're not sure why, but we do know that, it's a recognition that the existing first class of mRNA products, both from Moderna and from Pfizer BioNTech, have limitations.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Look. Any product. I mean, just to be fair, any product in any area of commerce, there's product version 1, and there's always improvements that get made over periods of time. So, there's nothing wrong with that concept. But here in the idea that, this is potentially much safer potentially than the original version, given that everything we knew certainly 3 years ago about myocarditis and so on. That it seems that this product would have been pushed much further ahead than it was, and that seems rather odd. I don't have the answers, but I'm just answering the question.
Well, not just that, sorry to interrupt, but not just that, but also because it requires less it doesn't require.
Of course, yes.
The very expensive refrigeration. They could have gotten this out to low and middle income countries faster and easier. It was on a different research trajectory, and therefore they could not for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but actually, that's an extremely important point, that the refrigeration issue, aside from the logistics involved, because of the cold chain requirements for all these products, there's a lot of variability that gets introduced into these products, because once they get into doctors' offices and pharmacies, distribution centers, where the storage may not be as optimal as it might be, and variable in terms of, you bring a vial out of the fridge or the freezer and you let it thaw out, and the person who's getting the first person in the day gets the first dose, but by the time the person at the end of the day, if it's a multi-dose vial, gets the last dose, the product may have been destabilized for some reason or another. So we had all those problems that were going on anyway, and if this was, this might reduce some of those problems. Again, it just adds to the questions. And again, they certainly had as much information about this product as they had for the other products that the FDA could have issued in the EUA if they had wanted to.
Right.
Dr. Wiseman, was there anything in the meetings asked in regards to why it was dropped down to 1/5 as much, or anything?
Well, I think they when they did their dose, the implication is when they're doing their initial animal studies and so on, they do a dose ranging study, and whether they consciously thought that this was going to produce similar antibody levels at a fifth of the dose, or that's what they happened to find out, that's how they titrated the dose. So I can't give you a direct answer, but that's what I'm surmising.
I would like to ask a question, Dr. Wiseman, Brandon. They are going through a regulatory approval process, I believe, and not an EUA process, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we know that they presented at ACIP the other day at the CDC. In my mind, typically you would wait to speak with ACIP until you pretty much have your regulatory process done. However, it's sort of standard now, I think, that as long as they're in a regulatory review process, it's considered appropriate to stop by and visit ACIP and present. What's your thoughts on that? Generally,
I mean, it just seems positive. I mean, there's no law against it. I mean, if someone wants to make a scientific presentation and CDC feel that they've got the time to do it, but this was a 3-day meeting packed into 2 days. They're considering, they've got like 2 or 3 hour blocks to cover for a variety of different vaccines, not just COVID. And the members of ACIP have got a lot of work to do, so you've got very valuable real estate of time there. You don't need to have this presentation right now. It's certainly nowhere near urgent. And even though, again, like intrinsically wrong with it, other than there's a waste of people's time and prioritization, the pattern has been that the FDA approves or authorizes the vaccine. The ACIP meets, within a week or so after that initial approval. And then they get the presentation from the company, this is our new product and these are the data and this is what the FDA said. And now, do we recommend it, as far as the vaccine recommendations? Okay, so it just seemed very odd why this was being presented. There was no action being required of the committee. The presenter from Moderna did say that this is under FDA review, under the PDUFA date, which is the prescription drug user fee. I'm losing the acronym now, but there's a clock that starts to tick once the product is submitted. The application is submitted, and it's the clock is ticking for about May or so. So they anticipate that the FDA are going to probably approve the drug, the vaccine, by May, at which time then it would be inappropriate. So, it just again, I'm scratching my head. The only time I can sort of remember, again, I've only been following the ACIP for the last, say, 3.5, 4 years, since the advent of COVID, was Novavax gave a presentation in advance of their EUA. But I think there were some exigent circumstances there in the context that the FDA seemed to have been dragging their heels for the longest time on Novavax, and ACIP at that time did need to consider sort of a broader set of issues that probably were going to come up. So I think that was appropriate at that time on the Novavax one. But here I'm just scratching my head. But anyway, it's what it is.
I would say that during COVID, I think one of the things that we have observed is industry got more aggressive, assertive, whatever you want to call it, with the process. And because it was an emergency, the regulatory apparatus, for example, seemed to defer more to industry. However, we're out of the emergency, and although there's still EUAs, it's still the case that children, pregnant women are, not, that's still experimental. It's those licenses don't apply to them in the package insert. They're very clear that we don't have the data.
Well, actually, that's a really super point. And I've got that. Actually, I didn't know you were going to say that, but I actually have a slide to show you on that exact point. If you want to just divert away from Moderna for a second.
Just for a second, yeah. I think it's important point.
So the sort of other presentations which are typical for these meetings that we've seen many times from similar people, oftentimes Dr. Havers, epidemiologist at CDC, gave a sort of updated version of a presentation she's given several times on the rates of hospitalizations and COVID incidents in different age groups, including less than 6 months. Now, they're not talking about vaccination, but there's an implication here is that, well, COVID is still going on in children, and we've got these vaccines, and then there's a discussion on vaccine hesitancy and how likely are you to use the vaccines and why not, and so on and so forth. So there's at least an implied endorsement of these products for children. So I'm going to show you very quickly, just so it's in black and white and it's spelled out for everyone, exactly the point that you just said a moment ago, Daniel. This is the package insert, which is off of FDA's website today. So I want to make sure I'm on the current version. Okay, this is the Comirnaty package insert. That's the piece of paper that goes inside the package. Everyone's seen these when they get drugs from the pharmacy. These little pieces of paper that fold out, and you can wallpaper your house with them. And this is the language, and I believe there's similar language in the Spikevax version.
There is, yes.
But this is very. Everyone needs to know this. This is what the official FDA package insert says. This is the legally approved language. This is what they can say, what a manufacturer actually can legally say about their product. In this example, in pregnancy, available data on Comirnaty administered to pregnant women are insufficient to inform vaccine-associated risks in pregnancy.
That's right.
Okay, right? Now, you can't get any more black and white than that. That means we have not got a clue, right, if this is safe and effective in pregnant women or not. Okay?
That's correct, and the same language is applied to children under 12.
Well, no, it's even more than that. Okay, hang on. It's actually more than that on children. But so there's a similar language in in lactation. It says something like, we don't know if
Lactation,
it goes in the
yes.
breast milk. Here we go. It is not known. Here we go. Right, if it goes in the breast milk, data are not available to assess the effects of Comirnaty in breastfed infant or milk product excretion. Okay, all right. So, but now the pediatric use, which is what you just mentioned a moment ago, there, Daniel. This is even more. This is even stronger language. So it's not the same as pregnancy and lactation. It's even stronger. Safety and effectiveness of Comirnaty in individuals 12 through 70 years. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Here, this is one here. There we go. This is it. Here we go. The safety and effectiveness of Comirnaty in individuals younger than 12 years has not been established. Okay?
That's right.
They have not established whether this drug, and there's similar language in the Spikevax, is safe and effective in children under 12.
That's correct.
4 years later, whatever it has been. Why not? Why don't we know that? And why are people still saying it's safe and effective for everyone? No, that's the practice.
And
does
why,
not say that.
Why, with all of these observational studies, if they're so good, why isn't that updating the label, the package insert?
Well, that's exactly right.
And we need to, we're not going to give up on this one, Dr. Wiseman. We have to keep investigating what this is about and what is this gap and what does it mean. Now, I do want to, we have a little time left. I want to go back to ACIP.
Okay.
And if we look at, this is important. If we look at ACIP, some of the outcomes we reported are that the agency, the public health agency is now, under the new government, is now taking a more nuanced, targeted approach. They're not saying everybody go get this vaccine. They're starting to look at risk profiles.
That's right.
Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yes. So in one of the presentations, I think the last one from I forget which presenter. It was a long Greek name who I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. Apologies. This was one of their slides. And this is talking about the work group. So just to be clear what that means. So the ACIP has about, I don't know, 10 or 12 people or something on it. And they're divided up into smaller groups that focus on different vaccines. They have a work group for COVID and influenza and so on. So this is the work group for the COVID vaccine. And so they're doing the sort of like the grunt work behind the scenes to formulate recommendations, which then come in front of this committee, for further consideration. So this is just one slide of several, but this is the key word here that you're alluding to, I think, Daniel. When polled on April the 3rd, the work group continued to support all non-universal policy options. In other words, they're saying that a universal recommendation is everyone has the vaccine, no matter what. Okay, which was sort of the line we were hearing from everyone, and we've heard accounts of that from Paul Offit about what Tony Fauci was saying, that he didn't want to have these nuanced recommendations because that means people wouldn't have it, and it would have all sorts of consequences. So he fought against that. I think, according to Paul Offit, he's been interviewed at least once or twice that I know of on that subject. But now they're, as you put it, Daniel, they seem to be saying, well, it doesn't have to be so universal. We can have this more nuanced approach. And what the recommendations will finally come out as, I don't know. But they certainly seem to be, softening their tone or having a much more nuanced tone in this and other areas. So I agree with your observation.
Right. No, it makes sense. And but this has been the challenge with how, during the pandemic, how these regulatory agencies and public health agencies have not managed this in a conventional, standard way. And this threw us off, and now we're still seeing some of this behavior, yet we're out of the emergency.
Right.
The COVID-19 case fatality rate is about what the flu is.
Yeah, it's very low. And that was another point that was also, sort of touched upon obliquely, still I don't think we have very good data on, all these hospitalizations and deaths. Are they due to COVID, or is COVID incidental, that they tested positive for COVID and they happen to die from something else, or possibly be hospitalized for something else? We still don't have that clarity on that issue, which is hugely, important, as you know.
Yes, certainly. So, in terms of safety, I want to bring up as well, with the new platform, is there we know that there are issues with the older platform, and again, it's a smaller dosage with the new. So is it a clean break from your perspective, Dr. Wiseman? So in other words,
no, it's not a clean break. It's definitely it's not a completely new, never seen this before platform. No, it is a version of the old platform. It's not a clean break. It's potentially a step in the right direction, but we've got a long way to go.
right.
And their trial of 5,000 patients in each group, again against Spikevax. It was what is called a non-inferiority study. It wasn't a placebo-controlled study.
Right.
You really don't have enough patients in there to pick up things like myocarditis and to have all the smaller subgroup stratifications of age and so on that you would need. I mean, even in the 30,000, or whatever it was, 40,000 trial, the original trial, aside from the questions that Peter Doshi and many others raised on those studies, you still don't have sufficient power in those to pick up lots of the things that we know have happened since then.
Yeah. So, well, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. Are there any other points you would like to make about this latest ACIP meeting?
Yeah, let me just quickly show this slide. This was a discussion. Again, you don't have to go into the details of it. Let me try and make it a little bit bigger. There we go. I know Brenda's going to put it up there later on, but this is comparing the US recommendations for the COVID vaccines versus other countries. And the US is sort of a bit of an outlier in many regards, that it is over recommending these vaccines compared to UK, Canada, Australia, and WHO. So that was I think an interesting slide to sort of look through. And again, it was interesting they put it up because it was sort of a little bit of a signpost to the point that you made a moment ago about they're sort of softening their stance, etc. And then this one, again, it has come up before. This, I know I've seen some commentary in some of this, some of the different people who've commented on this, but they have. This is very puzzling. I've commented on this going back a couple of years, several years now. Is that the standard dose interval for the original series, the first and second doses of the vaccines, was three weeks for Pfizer and 4 weeks for Moderna.
Right.
And based on some Canadian work, again a couple of years ago, CDC basically sort of added a recommendation over on top of FDA's approved or authorized language to say, well, you can actually, you can make that a longer dose interval because we might reduce the amount of myocarditis. Again, this seems to be an ongoing conflict or tension between the FDA. I mean, if it truly is important to reduce the dose to increase the dose interval between doses that could reduce myocarditis, why aren't the FDA putting that in that language, in their language? Why does CDC have to come along and modify it? And there's a whole question about can they even modify it under the regulations? So this again is another puzzling thing that this is going to be harmonized. I mean, get your act together, guys. It's either 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, but make up your mind what it is, right? And study and tell us, yes, we will reduce the amount of myocarditis. But again, I'm not saying that even if you take it at 8 weeks, the product is necessarily going to be safe, because you still have all the other problems that we know about, frameshift proteins, lipid nanoparticle adducts, DNA contamination, etc., etc. So I think those are the main things. Just last comment. There was a public, comment period. There was about 10 or 12 people. Most of them were not talking about COVID. A couple of them were. A couple of people, as in the past, have sort of said, "Well, guys, you really need to give Novavax a fairer shot at this." And there was one comment that sort of went and attacked. There was an attack on Mr. Kennedy. There was one or two attacks, I think, and then one on Tracy Hogue, who is now the special advisor.
She's in the FDA.
She's at the FDA, but she was present at the meeting as an FDA like an observer. She happened to be present at the meeting, and there was a sort of in one of the public comments some attack on her, which seems rather gratuitous. But so obviously there's people not happy with the current administration, and they're going to take whatever opportunity they can to express that displeasure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think this has been very helpful as always, Dr. Wiseman. You've been at the forefront of both working with TrialSite and other groups to identify issues, anomalies, contradictions that are very important. It's about patient safety. It's about human safety. And, we saw the risk-benefit thresholds change during the pandemic, where the perception was that the virus was very, very bad, and therefore we were willing to take on more risk to get vaccinated. And the CDC has not done a very good job of communicating that type of logic, and now we've had to step in, and others, and help educate folks about that. So these ongoing interviews about CDC ACIP, FDA are very important, and we want to thank you very much.
Well, and thank you, and thank you for all the work you've done. I know you supported the vaccine injury group, REC-19, and others. So that's tremendous. And again, I think the biggest thing about this meeting was what was not said, and there was really not a presentation on vaccine safety, on COVID safety. And I think that was, if I could pick one thing that stood out, that's what stood out. It was conspicuous by its absence.
Yeah, I agree.
As we wrap up, Dr. Wiseman, I was just going to follow up on that point of your general takeaway of the overall tone of the meeting compared to meetings of the past 3 years under previous administration. Has anything changed as far as the tone of questions, or did it feel similar?
No, it has changed. I mean, well, for several reasons. First of all, a lot of the committee members that were there in the past are no longer there. I think I'm assuming most of them, they have a certain term of, that they serve. So I think their terms had expired in any event. So there were a number of new faces. The tones that we already mentioned, were evident. And there were a couple of people on the committee, which I was pleasantly surprised to see. That one was Dr. Kurilla from NIH, who I remember being on the VRBPAC committee several years ago. And I recall at a time that he always tended to ask very good, insightful questions that may have challenged the narrative a little bit. I didn't hear too much from him in this go round, but I was pleased to see that he was on the committee. So if there's more people like him, then that's a good thing.
Great. Dr. David Wiseman and Daniel O'Connor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for unbiased news and opinion articles on the latest in scientific research, please visit TrialSiteNews.com. Also follow us on YouTube, Rumble, and X.